Hey everyone, tonight we're going to take a trip back in time to explore one of history's most peculiar and idealistic social experiments. Imagine you're sitting at a rough-hewn wooden table in a sparse farmhouse. It's dinner time. In front of you is a small bowl of unseasoned barley, a few slices of apple, and a glass of cold water. That's it. You look around, and everyone is eating the same thing, dressed in the same scratchy linen tunics. There will be no warm bread, no roasted potatoes, no milk, not now, not ever. Let's be honest, if you were suddenly dropped into this world, with its strange rules and meager diet, you probably wouldn't last the first month, let alone survive the brutal New England winter that's just around the corner. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. As always, I love seeing where everyone is listening from, so feel free to drop your city and the time of night in the comments below. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some background music, and let's get started tonight. You find yourself on a road that seems to crumble into a fine, warm powder under your feet. The year is 1842, and the town is Concord, Massachusetts. The air here feels different, charged with something more than just the scent of pine and damp earth. It's the feeling of ideas taking root, of conversations happening in quiet parlors and sun-drenched fields that could perhaps remake the world. A white church steeple rises above a canopy of elm trees, and the clapboard houses seem to lean in, as if listening to the intellectual hum of the place. This is the very heart of transcendentalism, a philosophy taking its first deep breaths, and you are standing in the middle of it. As you walk, you see a man approaching. He's in his early 40s, with a tall, slightly stooped frame wrapped in a simple, threadbare coat. His head is held high, and a cascade of fair hair falls to his shoulders. But it's his eyes that hold your attention. They are a gentle, piercing blue, and they seem to be looking at something far beyond the road in front of him, as if he's reading a sentence written on the horizon. This is Bronson Alcott. He offers a soft, serene smile to passers-by, but his mind is clearly elsewhere. He is a man who walks through the world but does not seem to be entirely of it. Curiosity guides you as you follow him at a distance. He turns into a small, unassuming house from which a low murmur of voices can be heard. You slip inside, finding a seat in the corner of a modest parlor. The room is lit by the soft glow of late afternoon sun filtering through wavy glass panes, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. About a dozen people are gathered on simple wooden chairs, their faces turned toward Mr. Alcott, who now stands by the hearth. He is not lecturing, he is simply thinking aloud, his voice soft but resonant. You listen, and the world outside begins to fall away. He speaks of the oversoul, a divine spirit that connects all living things, every person, every tree, every blade of grass. He argues that a church is a cage for this spirit, and that true worship is found not in a pew, but in a quiet walk through the woods, or in the honest, unfiltered thoughts of a child. He believes the soul of a newborn is the purest thing on earth, a perfect piece of divinity. It is society, he explains, with its demands for money, its dead traditions, its petty competitions and its stale education, that slowly buries this inner light under layers of dirt and obligation. The goal of a human life, he says, is not to build fortunes or win acclaim, but to unlearn the corrupting lessons of the world and rediscover that original, perfect soul within. His words don't march in a straight line, they meander, circling back on themselves like a river exploring a valley, and the effect is hypnotic. You feel the rigid certainties of your own world begin to soften at the edges. As he speaks about the sacredness of a child's mind, your own mind drifts, and the parlor in Concord dissolves. You find yourself standing on a busy street in Boston a few years earlier. The sign above the door reads, "The Temple School." You push the door open and step inside. The difference is immediate and profound. There is no sharp crack of a ruler on a student's knuckles, no monotonous chanting of memorized facts. Instead, the room is filled with a vibrant, respectful quiet. You see Bronson Alcott sitting in a circle with the children. his posture open, his expression one of genuine curiosity. He is not teaching them what to think, he is asking them how they think. He discusses art, literature, and even the Gospels, not as subjects to be memorized, but as prompts for the children to explore their own moral and spiritual landscapes. You watch as a young boy, who in any other school would be punished for speaking out of turn, offers a complex thought on the nature of forgiveness, and Mr. Alcott nods slowly, validating the boy's effort, guiding him gently to a deeper understanding. You see him welcome a young black girl into the classroom, treating her with the same dignity and respect as every other child, an act of quiet but radical defiance in the Boston of the 1830 seconds. But then you feel the mood outside the school begin to shift. You hear the whispers in the drawing rooms and press rooms of Boston. Parents grow nervous. A school that treats a black child as an equal? A school that encourages children to interpret the Holy Scriptures for themselves? It is deemed dangerous, heretical. You watch as, one by one, parents withdraw their children. The vibrant classroom grows quiet, empty. The beautiful experiment, a place that was a living embodiment of his philosophy, withers from a lack of funding and a surplus of fear. You feel the weight of this failure, the profound injustice of a beautiful idea being crushed by a world not yet ready for it. The school closes its doors, leaving Mr. Alcott with a mountain of debt and a reputation as a brilliant but dangerously impractical man. The memory fades, and you are back in the Concord parlor. The light outside has begun to dim. Later, you find yourself in another, more grounded place. The book-lined study of Ralph Waldo Emerson, Concord's most famous resident and Alcott's closest friend. The air here is different. It smells of old paper, leather, and quiet success. Emerson, a man with a sharp, intelligent face and a practical gaze, paces before his fireplace. He speaks of his friend with a mixture of profound admiration and deep exasperation. He tells you that Alcott's mind is one of the purest and most profound he has ever encountered, a direct conduit to the divine. But then he sighs, a sound of weary affection. He calls his friend a tedious archangel, a celestial being, magnificent to behold, but entirely unsuited for the mundane business of earthly life. He recounts how he has helped Alcott financially time and time again, only to watch the money disappear into some new, noble but ultimately doomed enterprise. He worries for Alcott's family, for his long-suffering wife Abba, and their 4 bright daughters. Your final stop of the day is the Alcott home itself, a small rented cottage they call the Dovecote. You step inside, and the reality of Emerson's words settles upon you. The home is clean and filled with love, but it is threadbare. Abba Alcott greets you with a weary but resilient smile. You see the patches on the children's clothes, the sparse pantry, the constant, unspoken anxiety of not knowing where the next meal or rent payment will come from. You watch as Bronson Alcott explains to his wife not what he has earned, an action which happens rarely, but what new philosophical truth he has discovered. He is a man who can provide endless food for thought, but very little for the dinner table. And as you stand there, a silent witness in their small home, you understand the man completely. You have seen his celestial mind, you have felt the sting of his worldly failures, and you have seen the quiet desperation that now fuels him. He is a genius backed into a corner, and he is ready to bet everything he has left on one last great, radical dream. A dream, no matter how beautiful, is a fragile thing. It can float in the hopeful air of a place like Concord, passed between friends in quiet parlors. But for it to take root in the hard earth, it requires something more than just a dreamer. It needs an engine, a deeper conviction, or perhaps a colder, harder will. You are about to witness the arrival of the engine. You find yourself back in the Alcott's small cottage, the Dovecote, as the autumn of 1842 settles over the town. The air grows crisp, and the leaves on the elms turn a brilliant, fleeting yellow. Inside, the atmosphere is much the same as when you left it. Mr. Alcott's philosophical conversations continue, beautiful and meandering, while the practical realities of life, the need for firewood, the mending of winter clothes, fall to his wife Abba. The great dream of a new Eden is still just that, a dream, a topic of endless, hopeful talk. There is a sense of stagnation, of a beautiful idea spinning in place, lacking the force to move forward. Then, one afternoon, there is a knock on the door. It is not a familiar neighbor. When the door opens, you see two figures who seem to have been cut from a different cloth entirely. The first is a man, trim and severe, dressed in dark, formal English wool that appears stiff and out of place in rustic Concord. This is Mr. Charles Lane. His posture is rigid, his face is thin and pale, and his gaze is not dreamy and distant like Mr. Alcott's, but sharp and intensely focused. He looks at the world not with wonder, but with judgment. Beside him stands his young son, William, a quiet, watchful boy who seems to carry his father's seriousness in his small frame. They have just returned from England with Mr. Alcott, who had travelled there seeking disciples for his new philosophy. In Charles Lane, he found not just a disciple, but a benefactor and a zealot. Their entrance into the small cottage changes the very quality of the air inside. Mr. Alcott is full of gentle welcome, but next to Lane's stark intensity, his host's demeanour seems almost fragile. You watch as Abba Alcott receives them with practiced hospitality, offering what little she has. But as you observe her, you see the subtle tension in her hands, the careful, assessing way she watches this Englishman. Her quiet, maternal intuition senses immediately that he is not just a guest, but a powerful new force in her family's life. The conversations in the evenings begin to change. Before, they were fluid, poetic explorations of the soul. Now, with Mr. Lane at the hearth, they take on a harder, more disciplined edge. You sit in the corner, a silent witness, and you hear new words enter the lexicon of the dream: purification, discipline, renunciation, sacrifice. Mr. Alcott speaks of freeing the soul. Mr. Lane speaks of conquering the body. While your host talks of the divinity within, his guest speaks of the sensual appetites and the selfish family institution as corrupting influences that must be disciplined or dissolved. You watch the two men for hours. Mr. Alcott, the visionary, will offer a beautiful, abstract thought, like a cloud drifting through the room. Mr. Lane, the dogmatist, will seize it, condense it, and turn it into a rigid, unforgiving rule. It is a strange and powerful partnership. Mr. Lane looks at your host with a kind of fierce, unwavering reverence, as if he has found the one true prophet. But you can sense that he also sees himself as the high priest, the one who will interpret the prophet's words and build the institution to enforce them. The most significant shift, however, is the one you cannot hear but can feel in the room's atmosphere. It is the introduction of money. You are present for a quiet conversation where Mr. Lane speaks of his considerable fortune. He declares his intention to dedicate it entirely to their shared vision. He will purchase the land, the tools, the supplies. He will fund the new Eden. At that moment, the dream ceases to be a beautiful, harmless fantasy. It becomes a concrete, funded plan. The castle in the air, as Abba has called it, is about to have its foundations dug into the earth, whether the earth is ready for it or not. You see the effect this has on everyone. For Mr. Alcott, it is the ultimate validation, a look of profound, relieved joy on his face. For Abba, it is a new kind of dread. The dream is now too real to be gently managed or dismissed. And for the Alcott children, whom you see peeking from the next room, it is simply a deep bewilderment. They watch this stern, foreign man who now sits in their father's place of honor, and they feel the ground shifting under their home. The arrival of the Englishman has brought the promise of a new beginning, but it has also brought a cold, demanding intensity. The gentle dream is beginning to forge an iron spine, and you can't help but feel a shiver of apprehension for the family that will now have to live under its rigid new laws. A dream spoken is like a melody on the air. beautiful and boundless. But a dream written down, dissected and defined, becomes something else entirely. It becomes a map, a law, a contract. You are here in this small room to witness the precise moment the melody is captured, pinned down, and turned into a set of rigid, unforgiving notes. The winter of 1842 deepens around the dovecote. Outside, the world is frozen and still, the trees etched like charcoal against a grey sky. But inside the Alcott's small parlour, a fire burns, and the air is thick with a fervent, restless heat. This room has become a crucible, a workshop for the soul, where the blueprint for a new world is being drafted. Night after night, you take your place in the shadows, a silent observer of the two architects of this impossible dream, Bronson Alcott and Charles Lane. The talks are endless. They are the first sound in the morning and the last sound at night, a constant murmur of philosophy that has become the very heartbeat of the house. The two men are a study in contrasts. Mr. Alcott, your host, speaks in sweeping, circular patterns. His language is one of beauty, of the divine spirit waiting to be awakened in man, of a return to a state of innocence. He paints the vision in broad, poetic strokes. He speaks of a world where commerce does not exist, where labor is a form of prayer, and where every action is guided by the highest moral truth. Mr. Lane listens to this poetry with a focused, almost hungry intensity, and when Mr. Alcott pauses, he takes these beautiful, airy clouds of thought and begins to solidify them into cold, hard stone. His language is not of beauty, but of duty. He speaks of prohibitions, regulations, and the absolute necessity of renouncing the corruptions of the world. You watch, fascinated, as he translates Alcott's vision into a stark and unforgiving rulebook. We must be sustained only by the purest products of the earth, Mr. Alcott will say, his eyes looking dreamily into the fire. The orchard and the field will be our providers. Then we must prohibit all animal foods, Mr. Lane will reply, his voice sharp and precise. Flesh, of course, but also milk, cheese, and butter, which are stolen from the cow, and honey, which is stolen from the bee. Even animal manure to fertilize the soil is a form of exploitation and must be forbidden. You hear the dietary laws being forged in this way, one restriction at a time. It is Mr. Alcott who proposes they eat only aspiring vegetables, those that grow up toward the light, as a symbolic gesture. It is Mr. Lane who codifies this into a strict ban on all base and degraded roots, the potato, the beet, the carrot, the very foods that sustain the poor farmers of this New England soil through the winter. While the men talk, you watch Abba Alcott. She sits nearby, her hands always busy with her mending, her face illuminated by the flickering firelight. She rarely speaks. Her silence is a powerful, grounding presence in the room of soaring ideas. When you hear Mr. Lane declare that potatoes are a degraded food, you see her fingers pause for just a moment over the patch on her daughter's dress. Her face remains impassive, but you can feel the weight of her unspoken question hanging in the air. How then will my children eat? The plan grows more radical with each passing evening. You hear them decide that there can be no private property. All things must be held in common, a consociate family sharing a single purse and a single soul. Mr. Alcott speaks of the beauty of this communal spirit. Mr. Lane speaks of the sin of individual ownership. Then the conversation takes a darker turn. You listen as Mr. Lane begins to dissect the very nature of the family itself. He calls it a selfish institution, a small circle of affection that closes its members off from a wider, universal love for all humanity. He suggests that for their new Eden to truly succeed, this narrow and possessive family bond might also need to be purified, or perhaps transcended entirely. At this, you see Abba look up from her sewing, her eyes fixing on Mr. Lane with a quiet, steely intensity. No words are exchanged, but in that one glance, you witness the drawing of a battle line. Mr. Alcott, lost in the beauty of the abstract principle, seems not to notice. But his wife, grounded in the fierce, tangible love for her husband and her children, understands the true meaning of the Englishman's words. It is a threat. The winter slowly begins to recede. The days grow a little longer, the light a little stronger. The talks in the parlour have reached their conclusion. The blueprint is complete. The name is chosen, Fruitlands. The laws are set. The time for whispers is ending. Soon the snow will melt, and they will have to leave this small, warm room of ideas and try to plant their perfect dream in the cold, hard, and unforgiving soil. Every dream of a new world begins with a search for a piece of land, a blank page on which to write a new story. But no land is truly blank. It has a history, a character of its own. You are about to join the search for a paradise, and the question hangs in the air. Are they looking for a place that is already perfect, or a place that is simply empty enough to hold the weight of their own perfection? The spring of 1843 finally arrives, breaking the grip of winter on Concord. The snow melts, the earth softens, and a restless energy fills the small dovecote cottage. The time for whispers and blueprints is over. The dream, so carefully constructed in the firelit parlour, must now find a home. You feel the palpable shift from intellectual exercise to nervous, tangible action. You accompany Mr. Alcott and Mr. Lane as they set out on their quest. You travel the muddy roads of rural Massachusetts, passing by sturdy, prosperous farms with neat stone walls and smoke curling cheerfully from their chimneys. But these are not the places they are looking for. Through their conversations, you begin to understand their unique and peculiar criteria. They are not searching for fertile soil, a sound roof, or proximity to a market. They are searching for a symbol. Mr. Alcott speaks of finding a place with the right spiritual character, a landscape that feels pure and untouched. He is looking for isolation, a sanctuary far from the corrupting influence of towns and commerce. Mr. Lane, while agreeing on the principle of separation, is guided by a colder logic. The place must be cheap. A prosperous farm, he argues, would be a temptation, a sign that they had not fully renounced the worldly desire for comfort and ease. They are seeking not a foundation for success, but a crucible for purification. Their first visit is to a piece of land not far from Concord, a farm offered for their use by their friend, Mr. Emerson. You stand with them on a gently sloping hill, looking out at a pleasant and promising sight. The fields are clear, the soil looks dark and rich, and the small farmhouse, while modest, appears sound. Mr. Emerson, in his quiet generosity, has offered them a place where they might actually succeed, and it is for this very reason that you witness them reject it. "It is too worldly, Charles," Mr. Alcott says softly, his gaze sweeping over the comfortable scene. "Too close to our old lives. The experiment requires a complete separation, a true baptism in nature." Mr. Lane nods in curt agreement. To him, success is not measured in bushels of wheat, but in degrees of sacrifice. A place like this offers too little struggle, and so you turn your backs on this sensible, hopeful place, and the search continues. You trail them to other properties. One is a lush farm in a river valley. You feel the richness of the soil under your feet, but they dismiss it. "The land is too fertile," they murmur. "It would provide a life of ease, not the noble character-building toil they seek." Another is a remote hilltop farm with a breathtaking view, but in the distance, you can just make out the thin white line of a church steeple, and for them, it is an unacceptable intrusion, a symbol of the old, organized religion they are determined to leave behind. Between these journeys, you find yourself back at the cottage, where Abba Alcott waits. You see the quiet hope in her eyes as she asks about the farms they have seen. She is not listening for descriptions of spiritual character. She is listening for talk of a tight roof, a clean well, a small garden plot where she might grow beans and potatoes for her children. You feel the immense gulf between her practical needs and the men's abstract quest. She is searching for a home, They are searching for an altar upon which to place their ideals. Finally, after weeks of looking, they find it. You arrive with them at a plot of land in the town of Harvard. It is 90 acres of neglected, almost forsaken ground. The small, unpainted farmhouse sags in the middle, its windows like vacant eyes. The fields are thin and stony, choked with weeds. The only promising feature is a grove of gnarled, ancient apple trees on a hillside, the last remnants of a long-dead orchard. There is a profound silence here, the silence of a place the world has passed by. You watch their faces. Mr. Lane surveys the property with a calculating eye. You can almost hear his thoughts. It is cheap, remote, and thoroughly unimpressive. It meets his requirements perfectly, but it is Mr. Alcott's reaction that seals the decision. His eyes are not on the dilapidated house or the rocky soil. They are on the old apple trees, and on the way the afternoon light falls across the unkempt fields. "This is the place," he says, his voice full of a quiet, reverent awe. "It is unadorned. It is humble. It will demand our labor. Here, we will not be tempted by worldly ease. We can begin anew." And in that moment, you understand. They have chosen this place not in spite of its flaws, but because of them. It is the perfect blank page precisely because it is so spoiled and difficult. It is the ideal crucible because it promises hardship. The purchase is made. The abstract dream has found its physical home, and you are left standing on this piece of poor, neglected land, feeling the cool spring breeze and a deep, unshakable sense of foreboding. What is a uniform? It is a declaration. It announces to the world who you are, what you believe, and to whom you belong. It can be a soldier's coat, a priest's collar, or a king's crown. It is a second skin, worn not always for comfort but for conviction. You are about to witness the shedding of an old skin and the painful, scratching adoption of a new one. You arrive at the farm in the full bloom of June, 1843. The air is warm and sweet with the scent of clover and uncut hay. For the Alcott girls, this first day at the place they call Fruitlands is one of wild, unrestrained freedom. You watch them run barefoot through the tall grass, their familiar cotton dresses catching on brambles, their laughter echoing in the wide open space. The house itself is a skeleton, a place of sagging floors and dusty windows, but the land is a kingdom. For a fleeting moment, as you see them unpack their few worldly possessions, worn books, patched blankets, simple toys, it feels like any other family starting a new, hard life. But this is not any other family, and this is not any other life. That first evening, as the sun sets and the first stars appear in the vast, dark sky, you gather with them in the main room of the farmhouse. There is no furniture yet, so you all sit on the floor or on upturned crates. It is here that Mr. Alcott and Mr. Lane establish the first official law of their new Eden, the law of clothing. It is Mr. Lane who speaks first, his voice cutting through the tired silence with its usual severe precision. He holds up a simple cotton dress, much like the ones the girls are wearing. "This fabric," he begins, "is a product of sin. It is grown in the fields of the South by the labor of enslaved men and women. Every thread is woven with human suffering. To wear it is to participate in the crime of slavery. We who seek a pure existence cannot wrap ourselves in the misery of others." His words land with a heavy finality. You watch as the girls look down at their simple clothes, which a moment ago were just clothes, and now have become symbols of a great and distant evil. Then Mr. Alcott speaks, his tone gentler, more philosophical. He picks up a woolen shawl, one of Abba's few comforts. "And this," he says, his voice soft, "is the product of a lesser, but still significant, injustice. The sheep is a gentle, peaceful creature. To take its wool is to exploit it for our own comfort. It is a theft, however accepted by the world. In our new life, we shall not participate in the dominion of man over beast. We will live in harmony with all creatures, not as their masters. With the two great fabrics of the age condemned, one for its human cost, the other for its animal cost, they present the alternative. It is a bolt of plain, unbleeped linen. This, they explain, is the only pure fabric. It is born from the humble flax plant, which suffers no injustice in its cultivation. It is simple, it is honest, and it will be their only garment. The next morning, you witness the quiet, somber ceremony of the renunciation. Abba Alcott, her face a mask of stoic resolve, folds away her family's clothes. You see the soft cottons, the warm flannels, the sturdy woolens that she has spent countless hours mending, all disappearing into a trunk as if being buried. Then she distributes the new garments, simple, shapeless tunics and trousers made from the rough, scratchy linen. When you see them all emerge, the transformation is startling. Individuality has been erased. Mr. Alcott, with his flowing hair, and Mr. Lane, with his severe posture, now look like strange, rustic monks. The little girls, stripped of their simple dresses, seem like miniature versions of the adults. They have become a uniformed order, and you feel, immediately, the physical reality of their conviction. The linen is stiff and abrasive. You can see the children shifting uncomfortably, scratching at their arms and necks. You can almost feel the constant, irritating friction of the coarse fabric against your own skin. It is the feeling of a hair shirt, a form of penance. You observe them throughout the day. For the men, the discomfort seems to be a point of pride, a badge of their commitment. They speak of it as a necessary discipline, a way to subdue the body's craving for comfort and ease. But you watch Abba, and you see something else. You see the practical worry in her eyes as she examines the flimsy seams and imagines how this rough fabric will hold up to the daily rigors of farm life and children's play. You see her glance at the sky, and you know she is thinking of the coming autumn and then the winter, and wondering how this thin, holy fabric will ever stand against the cold. The first law of heaven has been laid down, and it has come with the immediate, tangible cost of human comfort. The dream is no longer an idea. It is now a constant, scratching reality. Food is more than fuel. It is a story, a ritual performed 3 times a day. It is a choice that connects you to the earth, to your history, and to your own body. At most tables, it is a source of comfort and communion. But here, at this table, you will learn that every meal is a sermon, and every bite is a test of faith. You take your place at the long, rough-hewn table in the main room of the farmhouse. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the floorboards. There is no tablecloth, no centerpiece of flowers. The only utensils are plain wooden bowls and spoons, worn smooth with use. You sit on a hard, backless bench alongside the other members of the consociate family. A heavy, almost reverent silence hangs in the air as Abba Alcott places the evening meal on the table. There is no comforting aroma of roasting meat or baking bread. There is no steam rising from a hearty stew. The meal is a study in stark simplicity. In the center of the table is a large wooden bowl of cooked barley, plain and unseasoned. Beside it sits a platter of sliced apples and a pitcher of water drawn from the well. This is all. Your eyes scan the table, looking for a pat of butter, a shaker of salt, a pitcher of milk for the children, but there is nothing. This is the entire meal. As the food is served, the evening's lesson begins. It is Mr. Lane who speaks first. His voice precise and devoid of warmth. He explains that the meal is pure because it is free from all violence and exploitation. The flesh of animals, he says, is a product of bloodshed. To consume it is to consume the fear and pain of a fellow creature, and to awaken the baser, animal passions within our own souls. We seek to quiet the animal within, not to feed it. He goes on to condemn not just meat, but all animal products. Milk and cheese are theft from the calf, an unnatural indulgence. Even the golden honey from a wild beehive is forbidden, as it is the product of the enslaved labor of the bee. Then Mr. Alcott elaborates. his voice taking on its familiar, gentle, philosophical tone. He speaks of the need to purify the body to allow the spirit to flourish. He explains the absence of any seasoning or stimulant. The popular drinks of tea and coffee, he muses, are nervous excitants which create a false and agitated state in the soul. Spices and even salt are irritants that inflame the passions and distract us from a state of serene contemplation. Their goal, you understand, is to reduce life to its simplest, most unadulterated state, to consume nothing that might stir the blood or excite the mind. And then he explains the most peculiar doctrine of all, the reason for the absence of the hearty, common vegetables that sustain New England. He gestures to the simple meal. We consume only those growths that aspire toward the heavens, he says, his eyes looking at something far beyond the room. The grain which lifts its head to the sun, the fruit which hangs in the clarifying air. These are filled with light and spirit. We reject the base vegetables, such as the potato and the beet, which grow downward into the dark earth. To consume them is to draw our own spirits downward, to partake in a coarser, more material existence. You listen to this strange, poetic logic, and then you look down at the bowl in front of you. You lift a spoonful of the bland, unseasoned barley. The texture is soft, but the taste is of nothing at all. You chew slowly, the silence of the room broken only by the quiet scrape of spoons against wood. You drink the cold water to help wash it down. You eat a slice of apple, and its clean, sharp sweetness is a shocking burst of flavor in the otherwise monotonous meal. You look across the table at the others. The men eat slowly, with a kind of pious concentration, as if the act of eating this penitential food is a form of prayer. But then your gaze falls on Abba Alcott. She isn't eating much herself. Her attention is on her youngest daughters, trying to coax them to finish their portions. You see the deep, maternal worry in her eyes, a worry that has nothing to do with aspiring souls and everything to do with the simple, earthly need for nutrition. She knows, in a way these philosophers do not, what a growing child needs. And she knows this is not it. The meal ends. The bowls are empty, but the feeling of emptiness remains, a dull, gnawing ache in your stomach. You leave the table still hungry. You now understand that at Fruitlands, food is not meant for pleasure, or for comfort, or even truly for sustenance. It is an instrument of ideology. The body's natural, healthy hunger is not seen as a need to be met, but as a worldly craving to be disciplined and, if possible, conquered. The ideal diet, you realize with a somber chill, is a diet made entirely of ideals. The world of adults is built on memory and ambition, on rules and regrets. But a child's world is built on the immediate reality of a sunbeam, a smooth stone, a whispered secret. They are the truest inhabitants of any place, for they live entirely in the present moment. Here at Fruitlands, you will see that while the adults are busy building a paradise for the soul, their children are finding their own, much wilder, kingdom in the dirt and the weeds. You turn your attention away from the somber, intellectual world of the farmhouse and follow the sound of laughter into the sun-drenched fields of high summer. Here, in the tall grass and the shade of the gnarled apple trees, the 4 Alcott girls, Anna, Louisa, Lizzie, and little May, have established a separate and sovereign nation, one that operates on an entirely different set of laws. This is their kingdom, and it is far more real and vibrant than the abstract Eden their father is trying to build. You watch them, a tribe of 4, their simple linen tunics stained with grass and berry juice, their feet and legs caked in the cool, dark mud of a nearby stream. They are wild things, their hair unkempt, their faces browned by the Sunday here. Far from the droning voices of the philosophers, the world is not a text to be interpreted, but a thing to be experienced. You see them discover a patch of wild strawberries, their small hands carefully plucking the tiny, sweet jewels. You know, these are a forbidden supplement to their pure diet, a small, secret rebellion of the body against the tyranny of the soul. They eat them quickly, sharing with a conspiratorial glee the taste a shocking, delicious explosion in a world of bland barley. Their play is a vivid and poignant imitation of the world they have lost. You see Louisa, at 10 years old already, a natural storyteller and director, gathering her sisters in the gnarled roots of a great oak tree. This, she declares, is their castle. They make dolls from poppies with petals for gowns and fashion tiny plates and cups from acorns. They play house, a game of elaborate, imaginary feasts. You listen as they describe magnificent banquets of buttered toast, roasted chickens, and sweet cakes with frosting, their voices full of longing. You see them pretend to sip tea from their acorn cups, a phantom warmth and sweetness that their real lives no longer offer. This world of make-believe is both a joyful escape and a heartbreaking reminder of their constant, gnawing hunger. From the shade of the woods, you can still hear the distant, rhythmic thud of a hoe against the rocky soil. You see their father and the other men engaged in their joyless, inefficient labor, their faces grim with concentration. They are trying to force a paradise out of the stubborn earth. The girls, meanwhile, are not forcing anything. They are simply inhabiting the world as it is, finding its small, hidden treasures. While the men discuss the renunciation of all worldly beauty, you watch the girls weave intricate crowns for each other from clover and Queen Anne's lace. Their kingdom is full of the very beauty and ornament their parents seek to banish. You focus your attention on Louisa. There is a fierce, restless energy about her. She is the leader of the games, the captain of their small ship. But you also see her slip away from the others, finding a secret, sun-dappled spot in the tall grass. She pulls out a small, hidden notebook and a stub of a pencil. You watch, unseen, as she writes. Her brow is furrowed in concentration, her hand moving quickly across the page. She is not just playing, she is observing, recording, transforming the strange, hard reality of her life into stories. You realize that this place, for all its deprivation, is also a kind of crucible for her imagination. The hardship is watering the seeds of the writer she will one day become. As the afternoon wears on, you notice the boundless energy of the morning begin to fade. You see little May, the youngest, grow listless, her games forgotten as she lies down in the shade. The hunger is a constant companion, a quiet ache that even the most vibrant games of make-believe cannot entirely erase. You see them look up as a hawk circles in the vast blue sky, their faces full of a longing that seems older than their years. Later, as the sun begins to dip below the horizon, you see their mother, Abba, come out to the edge of the field to call them home. She watches them for a moment before they see her, and you can read the complex story on her face. There is a deep, maternal joy in seeing her children so free and so alive in nature. But you also see the profound pain in her eyes, the sorrow of a mother who knows that their simple, childish desire for a full stomach and a piece of cake is a comfort she cannot provide. The girls hear her call and run to her. The spell is broken. Their wild kingdom dissolves as they leave the fields and re-enter the somber, quiet world of the farmhouse. The door closes behind them, and they are once again the children of an austere and demanding paradise, their brief, joyful reign at an end. The earth does not care for philosophy. It has its own ancient laws of rock and root, of sun and drought. It demands not elegant thoughts, but the sweat of the brow and the strength of the back. You are about to witness what happens when a beautiful idea about labor comes face to face with a patch of stubborn, unyielding ground. You find yourself standing at the edge of a field under the oppressive heat of a New England July. The sun is a white, relentless eye in a bleached blue sky. The air is thick and still, buzzing with the sound of insects. In the distance, on a neighboring farm, you see the familiar, timeless image of a farmer guiding a plow, his sturdy ox moving with a slow, steady, and immensely powerful rhythm. You watch the dark, rich earth turn over in a clean, straight line. It is an image of harmony between man, beast, and soil. a partnership that has sustained humanity for centuries. But here at Fruitlands, that partnership has been declared a crime. You turn your attention to the field before you. Here, there is no ox, no plough, there are only men. You listen as Mr. Alcott explains the principle in his gentle, unwavering voice. "The ox is our brother," he says to one of the newer members, gesturing toward the neighboring farm. "He is not our slave. To place a yoke upon his neck is an act of tyranny. We seek to elevate ourselves, and we cannot do so by degrading the creatures who share this earth with us." Mr. Lane adds his own colder, more political reasoning. "It is another form of slavery," he states, "an institution of force that corrupts both the master and the servant. Our work must be pure, untainted by the exploitation of any living thing. And so, you witness the consequence of this pure ideal. You watch the philosophers play farmer. They are armed not with ploughs, but with simple, inadequate tools. A few spades and heavy, clumsy hoes. They are not built for this work. They are scholars, thinkers, men whose hands are accustomed to the smooth paper of a book, not the rough wood of a tool handle." Mr. Alcott, with his tall, thin frame, moves with a dreamy, disconnected grace. He pushes the spade into the rocky soil, his movements lacking force. He will often pause, leaning on his tool to gaze at a passing cloud or to point out the beauty of a common wildflower, his mind drifting far from the task at hand. His labor is an act of philosophical contemplation, and the earth remains largely unmoved by it. In stark contrast, Mr. Lane attacks the ground with a grim, punishing ferocity. His thin body is rigid with effort, his face set in a mask of grim determination. Every swing of his hoe seems to be an act of war against the stubborn soil, an attempt to beat the physical world into spiritual submission. He works until his breath comes in ragged gasps, his pale skin flushing red under the relentless Sunday. His labor is a form of self-flagellation. The sound of their work is a sad and lonely percussion. It is not the rhythmic, efficient sound of a plough slicing through earth, but the jarring metallic clink of a spade striking a hidden rock, followed by a grunt of frustration. It is the sound of a mismatched battle. The soil of this neglected farm is thin, acidic, and dense with stones. It resists them at every turn. You watch them through the long, hot afternoon. You see the blisters forming on their pale, soft hands. You see the sweat soaking their rough linen tunics, and the lines of exhaustion etching themselves around their eyes. As the day wears on, the philosophical pronouncements cease, replaced by the simple, animal sounds of heavy breathing and strained muscles. Meanwhile, in and around the farmhouse, you see another kind of labor. You watch Abba Alcott and the other women. Their work is no less demanding. You see them hauling heavy buckets of water from the well, their arms and backs straining. You see them on their knees in the small kitchen garden, tending to the few aspiring vegetables that will grace the dinner table. You see them washing the rough linen clothes by hand, their knuckles raw. Their labor is not a philosophical statement. It is a simple, unspoken, and relentless necessity. There is no glory in it, only the endless, grinding work of keeping the fragile enterprise from collapsing entirely. As the sun finally begins its descent, casting long, merciful shadows across the fields, the men lay down their tools. They straighten their aching backs and survey the result of their day of pure, untainted labor. It is a pitifully small patch of turned earth, a tiny, ragged island in an ocean of weeds and rock. It is a space that one man with an ox could have prepared in a single hour. They return to the house not with the proud satisfaction of a farmer, but with the bone-deep weariness of exhausted soldiers returning from a lost battle. That evening, you hear them speak of the spiritual nobility of their toil, but you have been a witness to the physical reality. Their beautiful idea, when applied to the unyielding earth, produces almost nothing. Humanity has spent centuries trying to conquer the cold and the dark. We build fires, we invent lamps, we seek warmth and light as a refuge. But what if that refuge is a prison? What if true sight is only possible when you let the darkness in, and true strength is only found when you embrace the cold? You are about to experience a life that seeks not to conquer the night, but to live within it. Your day at Fruitlands begins before the Sunday. You are awakened not by a gentle growing light, but by the deep, pre-dawn chill that has settled into the bones of the old farmhouse. You hear the quiet stirring of the community, a group of shadows moving in the grey twilight. You follow them out of the house and down a damp, worn path towards the Nashua River. A thick mist hangs over the water, and the air is so cold it feels sharp in your lungs. This is the first classroom of the day, and its lesson is one of Spartan discipline. You watch as Mr. Alcott and Mr. Lane lead the men to the water's edge. There is no hesitation. They remove their simple linen shirts and walk directly into the river. You can almost feel the shock of it yourself, the sudden, violent clench of muscles as the frigid water envelops them. You see the sharp, involuntary gasps for air, the grimaces of pain that they try to suppress. They call this hydrotherapy, a daily baptism intended to wash away the sloth of sleep and invigorate the spirit for the day's labours. They believe the shock of the cold purifies the blood and disciplines the body's base desire for warmth and comfort. You watch them emerge, their skin blue and mottled, shivering but with a look of stern, righteous satisfaction on their faces. They have conquered their own weakness, and the day has barely begun. The women and children do not partake in this riverside ritual. You observe Abba Alcott back at the house, her expression unreadable, as she directs her daughters to wash from a simple basin of equally cold well water. It is a less dramatic but no less uncomfortable start to the day. For the men, it is a philosophical statement. For the women and children, it is simply another cold, hard reality to be endured. The day unfolds in its usual pattern of difficult labour and meagre food. But as the sun begins to set, you prepare for the second great ritual of purification. The sky bleeds with the soft colours of twilight, a last gentle gift of light and warmth. In any other home, this is the moment when a match would be struck, when the soft, golden glow of an oil lamp or a candle would push back the gathering shadows, creating a small, warm circle of civilization against the night. Here, you witness nothing. The light fades, and no one moves to replace it. The room grows dim, then dark. Faces become indistinct silhouettes. The corners of the room dissolve into a deep, impenetrable black. You are present for the first night you truly experience the totality of darkness, a state modern life has almost entirely forgotten. You listen as Mr. Lane explains the principle. Artificial light, he declares, is a vulgar intrusion upon the natural order. It creates a false day, disrupting the soul's proper rhythm of work and rest. He calls it light pollution, an impurity that prevents one from truly seeing. True vision, he insists, comes from the inner eye, a faculty that can only be developed in the quiet and clarity of the dark. And so, their evenings are spent in darkness. The only illumination comes from the faint, silvery light of the moon filtering through the windows, or the dying, red embers of the fire in the hearth. Your senses begin to change. With sight rendered almost useless, your hearing becomes incredibly acute. You focus on the sound of Mr. Alcott's voice as he begins the nightly philosophical conversation. Without the distraction of seeing his face, his words seem to become more potent, more disembodied, as if they are ideas floating freely in the void of the room. The talk of the oversoul and spiritual purity takes on a strange, ethereal quality in the enveloping darkness. But you also feel the immense weight of what is lost. There can be no reading, no writing. Abba cannot do her mending. The children, unable to see enough to play, simply sit in the dark, silent and still, listening to the incomprehensible chatter of the adults. Time itself seems to slow down, stretching out into a long, quiet and unnerving expanse. The night is no longer a temporary pause, but a vast, empty territory they must inhabit. Later, the conversation winds down. The members of the community rise, feeling their way through the pitch-black house to their simple beds. You are left alone in the silent, empty room, surrounded by a darkness so complete it feels like a physical presence. You reflect on the day's lessons, the shocking cold of the morning, the enveloping darkness of the night. They are two sides of the same conviction that to find the soul, you must first strip the body of all its ancient comforts. Every society draws a line between what is acceptable and what is not. The line can be about an idea, a belief, or something as simple as the hair on a man's face. To cross that line is to become an outcast, a heretic, a fool. But sometimes, the outcast from one world is the prophet of another. You are about to meet a man whose crime was his own face, and whose only refuge is this strange island of misfits. The late summer has settled into a weary rhythm at Fruitlands. The days are a familiar cycle of strenuous, inefficient labor, meager meals, and long, abstract conversations in the moonlit darkness. The world outside has faded into a distant memory. The 90 acres of this farm have become the entire universe, an isolated crucible where the experiment in human perfection grinds on. It is into this insular world that a stranger walks, a reminder that another, very different world still exists just beyond the trees. You see him from a distance, a solitary figure making his way up the long, dusty track to the farmhouse. His approach causes a quiet stir. Visitors are a rarity. As he gets closer, you see he is not one of the pale, thin thinkers you have grown accustomed to. This is a man of the earth, sturdy and weathered, with hands that know work. But it is his face that is so startling, so utterly defiant. He wears a magnificent, flowing, and completely unapologetic beard. You must understand what this meant in the 1840 seconds. It was an age of the clean-shaven face. A beard was seen as a mark of radicalism, of unkempt wildness, or even of moral depravity. It was an affront to polite society. The members of Fruitlands gather as he arrives, their curiosity piqued. This man, with his proud and unconventional appearance, is clearly a fellow nonconformist. His name is Joseph Palmer. They invite him to sit and share their meal of water and bread, and as the afternoon fades, you listen as he tells his story. His voice is steady and strong, the voice of a man who has been tested and has not broken. He speaks of his life in the nearby town of Fitchburg, and of the persecution he has endured for the simple crime of wearing his beard. He tells of the daily jeers from adults, the rocks thrown by children, the sermons preached against his disreputable appearance. Then he recounts the event that made him an outcast. He describes walking through the town centre when he was ambushed by 4 men. They were armed with scissors, a razor, and a burning conviction that his face was their business. They seized him, intending to forcibly shave him right there in the street. You listen, picturing the scene, the glint of the razor, the raw hatred. Palmer, a man of principle, fought back to defend not just his beard, but his right to his own self. The story takes its most absurd and tragic turn. For the crime of defending himself, he was the one arrested. He was charged with unprovoked assault, fined, and when he refused to pay the unjust penalty, he was thrown into the county jail. He spent over a year in a cold cell, a prisoner of his own principles, writing letters and smuggling them out to protest the injustice. He became a local legend, the bearded man of Fitchburg, a symbol of rugged, defiant individuality. As his story concludes, a deep silence falls over the room. You look at the faces of the Fruitlands community. You see no judgment, no suspicion. You see only a profound and immediate recognition. They see in Joseph Palmer a brother. He, like them, has been scorned by society for living according to his own private truth. Mr. Alcott rises and clasps Palmer's hand, his voice full of a rare, uncomplicated warmth. "You have suffered for your convictions, sir," he says. "You have honored your own soul against the tyranny of the mob. You are welcome here. This is a home for those who will not conform." Mr. Lane nods, his expression one of stern, unyielding approval. In this moment, you witness a genuine act of compassion. Palmer, the exile, has found his sanctuary. In the days that follow, Palmer settles into the community, but you begin to notice a new, subtle friction. Joseph Palmer is not a philosopher, he is a farmer, he knows the land. You watch him as he crumbles the thin, acidic soil in his hands, his brow furrowed with a professional's concern. You hear him gently suggest that they might have a better yield if they used animal manure to enrich the fields. You see him observe their clumsy, back-breaking labor and propose a more efficient way to work. And you witness the polite but firm rejection of his wisdom. Mr. Alcott explains that to use manure would be to implicate themselves in the exploitation of animals. Mr. Lane states that the purpose of their labor is not efficiency, but spiritual purification through struggle. They listen to his practical advice, and they dismiss it in favor of their abstract principles. Here, you see the crack in the foundation laid bare. They have welcomed this man with open arms because they honor his idealism, his defiance. But they will not listen to his earthly, practical knowledge. They have accepted the man, but they have rejected the farmer. Joseph Palmer has escaped a prison of public opinion only to find himself in a sanctuary of impracticality. He is a man of the soil living among men of the air, and his very presence highlights the immense, tragic gulf between their beautiful theories and the unyielding laws of the earth. There are two kinds of love. One is like the light of the sun, spreading itself thin and equal across the entire world, touching everything but warming nothing deeply. The other is like the fire on a hearth, a small, concentrated blaze that offers intense, life-giving warmth to those who are close to it. You are about to witness a battle between these two fires, a war between the universal and the personal, fought in the quiet shadows of a farmhouse kitchen. The days are growing shorter now. A distinct chill has crept into the September air, a sharp reminder of the coming winter. The meager harvest is in, and the reality of the community's failure hangs unspoken in the atmosphere, as tangible as the morning frost on the window panes. The hopeful energy of the summer has curdled into a quiet, simmering tension. You feel it most acutely in the space between two people, Charles Lane, the fanatic, and Abba Alcott, the mother. You have been a witness to the small skirmishes that precede the war. You have seen Mr. Lane's disapproving gaze as Abba spends a few moments reading to her youngest daughter, time he considers a frivolous distraction from the spiritual labor of the community. You have been present at the dinner table when the last apple is being divided, and you have seen Mr. Lane subtly guide the largest portion to Mr. Alcott, the visionary, while Abba quietly slips her own small share onto her daughter Lizzie's plate. To him, the children are just smaller, less important vessels for the great experiment. To her, they are the entire point of existence. The inevitable confrontation happens on a cold, windswept evening. The children are finally asleep in their chilly upstairs room. The main room of the farmhouse is dark, lit only by the last, dying embers of the fire. You sit in your accustomed place in the shadows as Mr. Lane finally decides to voice the dangerous idea that has been growing in his mind. He speaks directly to Mr. Recombrefort, Alcott, but you feel that his words are aimed, like arrows, at the silent figure of Abba, who is mending a torn tunic by the faint firelight. Bronson, he begins, his voice devoid of any warmth. We have renounced the corruptions of the outer world. We have purified our diet, our labor, our clothing, but we have not yet faced the most intimate and dangerous idol of all, the selfish family. You watch Mr. Alcott's face, his brow furrowed, as he listens, captivated as always by the cold, radical purity of Lane's logic. This consociate family we have built can never achieve a truly universal love, as long as these smaller, more intense affections exist within it, Lane continues. The bond between a husband and a wife, the attachment of a parent to a child, these are forms of spiritual gluttony It is a hoarding of affection that should belong to all. It creates a private world of secrets and loyalties that stands in opposition to the communal soul. He pauses, letting the weight of his words settle in the dark room. To achieve the final purification, he concludes, we must transcend these earthly bonds. Our life here must become one of celibacy and spiritual detachment. The children are children of the community, not of one couple. You see the terrible conflict on Mr. Alcott's face. He is a man who loves his family deeply, yet he is utterly mesmerized by this chillingly perfect ideal. He is a ship caught between the warm, familiar shore and the siren song of a perfect, icy sea. He hesitates, searching for a philosophical compromise, unable to immediately refute the logic that attacks the very heart of his life. It is Abba who speaks. She sets down her sewing, her movements slow and deliberate. When her voice comes, it is not loud or hysterical. It is low, controlled, and colder than the autumn wind outside. Mr. Lane, she says, her eyes fixed on his shadowy form. You speak of a universal love that you have only read about in books. I speak of a love that I live every single day, a love that washes and feeds and clothes and holds a sick child through the night. You call it a selfish institution. I call it the only thing that is real in this place of shifting, hungry ideals. She rises and stands between her husband and the other man, a small, resolute figure against the dying light of the fire. Your universal love is a thin, bloodless, and theoretical thing. It costs you nothing. My love for my husband and my children costs me everything, and I give it gladly. You speak of sacrificing our family for the sake of the idea, but you have it backward. The only reason to have an idea is for the sake of the family. I will not have my children be cold and hungry for your philosophy, and I will not have their mother's and father's love taken from them and diluted into some thin, universal gruel to feed your spiritual vanity. This is my family, and you will not touch it. The words fall into a profound, ringing silence. The battle has been fought. No one has moved, but a deep, irreparable chasm has opened up in the floor of the farmhouse. Mr. Alcott sits, stunned and silent, trapped between his prophet and his wife. Mr. Lane, for the first time, has no immediate, logical reply. He has come up against a force that his philosophy cannot account for. You watch as Abba goes to the hearth, adds a small log to the embers, and then moves to the stairs to check on her sleeping children. You are left in the chilling silence, knowing you have just witnessed the moment the foundation of Fruitlands has irrevocably cracked. The fanatic, with his cold, perfect, and inhuman ideal, has finally met the unyielding and ferocious love of the mother. A harvest is a day of reckoning. It is the moment when the earth gives its final, honest answer to the questions you have asked it all season long. It is the weighing of a summer's worth of sweat and hope, the moment a dream is measured in bushels and pounds. You are here for the day of judgment at Fruitlands, to witness what the land will give back in return for a diet of pure philosophy. The air of early October is sharp and clean, with a metallic chill that hints at the coming frost. The trees surrounding the farm have begun their slow, brilliant surrender to the season, their leaves turning crimson and gold. In a normal farming community, this would be a time of celebration, the culmination of a year's hard work, with the promise of a full larder to carry them through the winter. But here at Fruitlands, you feel no sense of celebration. You feel only a brittle, fragile hope, a collective holding of breath as the community prepares to face the truth of their summer's labor. You follow the small group as they walk out to the fields. Their movements are slow, almost ceremonial. This is the day the earth will pass its verdict. They begin with the grain, their primary crop of barley. You stand with them in the small, sad field. The stalks are thin and sparse, the heads of grain small and underdeveloped. You watch them work with simple hand scythes. The rhythmic swish of the blades a lonely sound in the quiet morning. As they bind the stalks into sheaves, the truth becomes immediately, visually apparent. The collection is pitifully small. You see Abba Alcott's hands pause for a moment as she binds a sheaf, and you can see in that small gesture a quick, desperate calculation of how little bread this will make. From the grain field, you move to the vegetable patch. Here, they gather the aspiring vegetables they have managed to coax from the poor soil. Without the enriching power of animal manure, the plants are spindly, their leaves pale. They pull the small ears of corn, many of them stunted and incomplete. They gather the few squashes and beans that have managed to grow. The baskets they fill are not the overflowing, abundant images of a traditional harvest. They look half empty, a collection of afterthoughts. Their last hope rests in the old, gnarled apple trees on the hillside. You watch as the children, for a moment, find joy in the task, their small hands reaching up to pluck the fruit. But even here, the reality is disappointing. Many of the apples are blighted, marked by insects or rot. The ones that are good are small and hard. It is not the bounty that would see them through the winter with pies and cider, but a meager offering that will have to be carefully rationed. When the work is done, they bring it all back to the farmhouse and lay it out on the ground. This is the moment of reckoning. You stand as a silent witness before the sum total of their utopian harvest. There is a small pile of barley sheaves, a few baskets of pale vegetables, and a modest mound of apples. This is it. This is the fruit of their animal-free labor, their pure diet, their philosophical farming. This is what stands between the 14 souls of this community and the long, unforgiving New England winter. A profound, heavy silence falls. No one speaks. In this moment, there is no philosophy that can soften the brutal, physical reality of the scene before them. The beautiful words and high ideals that have filled the air for months are rendered meaningless by this small, inadequate pile of food. The earth has given its answer, and its answer is not enough. You look at the faces of the men. You see Joseph Palmer, the real farmer, and his expression is one of deep, sorrowful resignation. He knew this was coming. This verdict is no surprise to him. You see Mr. Alcott, and his face is a mask of profound, almost childlike disappointment. It is as if a beautiful poem has been disproven by a cruel fact. Then you see Mr. Lane. His jaw is tight, his eyes cold with a frustrated anger. His perfect, rigid system has been tested by the real world, and it has been found wanting. But it is Abba Alcott's face that holds the true weight of the moment. She is not looking at the harvest as a failed idea. She is looking at it as a mother. She is mentally dividing this pitiful amount of food by the number of mouths she must feed, and then by the number of cold, dark days that lie ahead. You can feel the quiet, gnawing desperation begin to take root in the community, replacing the last vestiges of their fragile hope. That evening, the mood in the dark farmhouse is different. The usual philosophical talk is gone, replaced by a tense, fragmented discussion of rationing. Every apple is counted. Every cup of barley is allocated. The dream of building a new Eden is dead. The grim, practical reality of surviving the winter has begun. The human mind is a powerful thing. It can build cathedrals of thought while the body shivers in a hovel. It can feast on abstract truths while the stomach aches with hunger. But there comes a point when the body's quiet, insistent screaming can no longer be ignored, when the most beautiful words in the world cannot drown out the sound of a child's stomach rumbling in the dark. You are here for those evenings. The days of late autumn are short and grey, and the nights arrive with a swift and biting cold. Winter is no longer a distant threat. You can feel it pressing against the thin walls of the farmhouse, seeping through the cracks around the windows, a constant, invasive presence. The meager harvest is being strictly rationed, and the evening meal has shrunk to a truly penitential portion of boiled barley and a few slices of withered apple. Hunger is no longer a philosophical concept to be overcome. It is the central, governing reality of life at Fruitlands. You sit with the family in the main room after the sparse meal is finished. The darkness, which once felt like a state of spiritual clarity, now feels like a cold, heavy blanket. The only light comes from the small, weak fire in the hearth, a fire kept small to conserve precious firewood. In the dim, flickering light, the faces of the community are like masks of shadow and sorrow. It is into this atmosphere of cold and want that Mr. Alcott and Mr. Lane attempt to cast their familiar net of words. They seem determined to ignore the palpable misery in the room, to rise above it on wings of pure philosophy. It is in moments of physical trial that the soul is given its greatest opportunity for growth. You hear Mr. Alcott say, his voice trying to recapture the gentle, confident tone of the summer. The body's craving is a distraction from the spirit's true purpose. By denying the former, we nourish the latter. Mr. Lane's words are even colder, harder. The hunger we feel, he states, his voice cutting through the gloom, is not a sign of failure, but a sign that our attachment to the material world is still too strong. We must desire less. The spirit must learn to sustain itself on a diet of pure truth, not coarse grains. You listen to these words, and for the first time they sound not just impractical, but hollow and almost cruel. You look away from the men and focus on the physical reality of the room. You see the Alcott girls, huddled together for warmth under a single thin shawl. You see little May shivering, her face pale in the faint firelight. You see Lizzie, the most frail of the sisters, trying to stifle a persistent, hacking cough that rattles in her small chest. Every cough is a sharp, physical punctuation mark that cuts through the men's smooth, abstract sentences. It is the sound of a body that needs more than pure truth to be well. You watch Abba Alcott. She sits with her daughters, her arm wrapped around Lizzie. She is not listening to the men. Her entire being is focused on the small, shivering bodies of her children. You see her rubbing Lizzie's back, trying to warm her with her own body heat, whispering something soft and comforting that is lost in the larger drone of philosophy. Her face, illuminated by the dying embers, is a portrait of quiet, controlled anguish. She is a mother forced to listen to a sermon on the virtues of starvation while her children are cold and sick. You can feel the silent scream building behind her weary, resolute eyes. The contrast is unbearable. On one side of the room you have the disembodied voices of the men, spinning theories in the dark, speaking of a disembodied oversoul. On the other side you have the undeniable, physical reality of a mother trying to comfort her hungry, shivering children. The high ideals have become a bitter mockery of the empty stomachs. The conversation eventually falters, even the philosophers running out of words to offer against the profound, encroaching cold. The community retreats for the night, another day of their experiment endured. You are left in the dark room, the sound of Lizzie's faint coughing still echoing in the silence. You understand now that the foundation of Fruitlands is not just cracked, it is collapsing. It is being devoured from within by the simple, undeniable needs of the human body. The beautiful cathedral of thought they built is crumbling into ruin, for they forgot to build a kitchen or to properly heat the rooms. Decline is often a slow, creeping thing, a quiet unraveling of hope. But sometimes there is a single moment of absolute clarity, a morning when the world has been transformed overnight, when every lingering illusion is frozen and shattered by a beautiful, brutal, and uncompromising truth. You are here for the morning of the first hard frost, the day the gentle, philosophical dream comes face to face with the reality of winter. You are in the deep, silent cold of a November night. The last of the autumn leaves have fallen, and the trees stand like skeletons against a star-filled sky. Inside the farmhouse, the community sleeps a restless, troubled sleep, huddled under thin blankets. The meager fire in the hearth has died down to a few pale embers, offering no defense against the profound chill that settles over the land. The temperature drops, and a silent, crystalline transformation begins. You are present when the family awakens. The first thing you feel is the cold. It is a different kind of cold than before. It is not the damp chill of autumn. It is a sharp, dry, biting cold that seems to have penetrated the very walls of the house. It is the cold of iron. You see the family members stir, pulling their thin blankets tighter, their movements slow and reluctant. Then you see Abba Alcott rise and go to the window. You stand beside her, looking out at a world made new. Everything, every blade of grass, every fallen leaf, every branch and twig is coated in a thick, intricate layer of white frost. The ground is no longer soft earth. It is a hard, glittering, unyielding surface. The rising sun catches the millions of tiny ice crystals, and the entire landscape sparkles with a cold, breathtaking, and utterly merciless beauty. It is the arrival of a new season, a new reality. The time for planting and growing is definitively over. The earth is now sealed. You feel the ice-cold floorboards under your feet. You watch as little May takes a breath, and a small white cloud appears before her face. You can see your own breath in the air, inside the house. The cold is not just outside anymore. It has invaded their sanctuary, and it is now that the terrible, dangerous folly of their principles is laid bare. You witness the morning routine as the family dresses in their uniform of pure linen. In the summer, the fabric was merely uncomfortable, a scratchy annoyance. Now, it is a genuine threat. You feel how the thin, coarse material offers no barrier to the cold at all. It is like wearing a garment of ice. The cold doesn't just touch the skin, it sinks deep into the bones, a persistent, draining chill that no amount of movement can seem to shake. You watch the children, their faces pale, their lips and fingers tinged with blue. They huddle together, shivering violently, their small bodies wrapped in a fabric that holds no warmth. Lizzie's cough, a constant quiet sound for weeks, is now a harsh rattling bark in the cold, thin air. The abstract dream of spiritual purity has now become a direct, physical assault on the health of these children. You turn your attention to the men. You look at Mr. Alcott and Mr. Lane. For the first time, they are silent. There are no philosophical justifications, no lofty speeches about the soul's ability to transcend physical hardship. They stand, shivering like everyone else, their faces a mixture of shock, denial, and dawning horror. What can a theory about the oversoul offer against a temperature below freezing? What is the moral purity of linen worth when your children are turning blue? Their beautiful words, their entire intellectual fortress, has been rendered instantly obsolete by the simple, brutal fact of the weather. Reality has delivered a blow so direct and powerful that even their powerful minds cannot spin it away. It is Abba who moves first. While the men are frozen in their silent failure, she acts. Her face is a mask of grim, maternal resolve. You follow her to a large wooden trunk in the corner of the room, a trunk that has been closed all these months. She throws it open. Inside are the clothes they renounced in June. You see the soft, thick comfort of wool and cotton, the very fabrics they condemned as impure. Without a word, she pulls out a warm woolen shawl and wraps it tightly around a shivering Lizzie. She finds a small flannel shirt and pulls it over little May's linen tunic. It is an act of quiet, desperate rebellion. It is an admission of utter defeat for the experiment, but it is a declaration of victory for a mother's love. She is choosing the impure warmth that will protect her children over the pure ideal that is threatening their lives. You are left watching this scene by the struggling fire. The dream of Fruitlands, a place of high ideals and simple living, has been revealed for what it truly is, a cold, threadbare nightmare. The first frost has killed more than the plants in the field. It has killed the last, lingering remnants of their beautiful, impossible illusion. There are two ways to face a ruin. One is to stay, to sift through the rubble, and to salvage what you can from the wreckage. The other is to turn your back and walk away, pretending that a new, more perfect city can be built somewhere else, even as the walls are crumbling behind you. You are about to witness the departure of the dreamers, and the quiet, terrible strength of the one who stays behind. The days that follow the first frost, are a landscape of quiet despair. The beautiful theory of Fruitlands has been shattered by the cold, hard fact of winter, and the silence of its two architects is a testament to their defeat. You witness Mr. Alcott, his usual gentle optimism extinguished, wandering the frozen fields like a ghost. You see Mr. Lane, his rigid certainty broken, pacing the floor of the farmhouse, trapped in a cage of his own failed logic. The dream is dead, and its corpse lies between them. It is Mr. Lane who finally breaks the silence, not with an admission of failure, but with a final desperate act of denial. You are in the main room, listening as he formulates the plan. He argues that the fault lies not in their principles, but in their lack of numbers. Their spirit is being crushed, he insists, by the sheer weight of the labor. The solution, he declares, is not to change the dream, but to find more dreamers. He proposes a quest. He and Mr. Alcott will travel to the nearby Shaker communities and visit with other reformers. They will go on a mission to recruit new members, to bring back fresh conviction, and, though it is left unspoken, fresh resources to rescue their failing Eden. You watch Mr. Alcott's face as he listens to this. You see a flicker of his old hope return. For him, this is not a flight from reality, but a noble pilgrimage. It is a chance to escape the quiet accusation in his wife's eyes and the tangible evidence of his failure that surrounds him. The departure is a hurried, somber affair on a grey and windswept morning. You watch as Abba Alcott stands at the doorway, her 4 daughters clustered around her. There are few words. The men, wrapped in what warm clothing they have, walk away down the frozen track, their figures shrinking into the vast wintry landscape. They do not look back. You are left with the 5 of them, watching until the dreamers have disappeared from sight. And then a new reality settles over Fruitlands. It is the reality of emptiness, of a profound and dreadful quiet. The constant humming engine of philosophical talk has been silenced. The house is now filled with a vast, anxious stillness, broken only by the whistling of the wind and the sound of a child's cough. The absence of the 2 men, the dominant forces who shape this world, leaves a vacuum so complete it feels like a physical presence. The farm feels abandoned, a lonely outpost at the edge of the world, haunted by the ghost of a dead idea. In this emptiness, you become a silent companion to Abba Alcott. With the dreamers gone, the full, crushing weight of survival falls upon her shoulders. You witness a strength you have only glimpsed before, a resilience born not of abstract ideals, but of a mother's fierce and practical love. You follow her through the long, cold days. You see her chopping the last of the firewood with grim determination, her breath clouding in the icy air. You are with her in the larder as she surveys the last few apples and the dwindling supply of barley, her mind performing the impossible calculus of survival. You watch her mending the children's warm, impure woolen clothes, a quiet, daily act of defiance against the principles that have brought them to this state. The nights are the hardest, the darkness is total, the silence immense, but Abba does not allow despair to conquer her home. You watch as she gathers her 4 girls by the weak and sputtering fire. She pulls out a worn copy of the Pilgrim's Progress, and in the flickering light, her voice becomes a small, steady flame of comfort. She reads them stories of hardship, of perseverance, of courage in the face of overwhelming odds. She is not teaching them philosophy. She is teaching them how to endure. But there are moments when the facade cracks. Late one night, long after the children are asleep, you are the only witness as she sits alone by the dying embers. The house is completely silent. You see her bury her face in her hands, and you feel the waves of exhaustion, fear, and profound loneliness that she keeps so carefully hidden during the day. Her body trembles with silent, weary sobs. It is a moment of raw, unguarded despair, and then you see her take a deep, shuddering breath, wipe the tears from her face, and square her shoulders. The fire is almost out. She rises to find another log. The night is not yet over. Words are for dreams, for plans, for justifications. But for failure, there is only silence. It is a language that everyone understands, a heavy blanket that settles over a room when all the beautiful words have been used up and found wanting. You are about to take a seat at a table where silence is the only thing on the menu. It is a bitterly cold evening in early January of 1844. Mr. Alcott and Mr. Lane have returned from their hopeless quest. They came back days ago, not with a triumphant group of new converts, but alone, empty-handed, and cloaked in the grim finality of defeat. Their journey yielded nothing but closed doors and the cold pity of the Shaker communities they had hoped to persuade. With their return, the last, desperate ember of hope has been extinguished. The air in the farmhouse is no longer tense. It has moved beyond tension into a state of profound funereal stillness. You take your place at the long wooden table for the evening meal. The last few members of the consociate family gather, their movements slow and heavy, like sleepwalkers. Joseph Palmer is here, his bearded face etched with a farmer's resignation. The Lanes are here, and the Alcotts. You watch as Abba places the meal on the table. It is the ghost of a meal. It is a pot of boiled water, thin and grey, with a few scattered grains of barley floating at the bottom. For the entire table, there is a single shriveled apple, which she cuts into impossibly thin, almost transparent slices, one for each person. This is not sustenance, it is a ritual of starvation. They sit, and a silence so deep and complete that it feels like a physical weight settles over the room. You look from face to face in the dim, flickering light of a single tallow candle, a concession Abba has won against the darkness. For the children's sake. There are no more philosophical pronouncements. There are no more justifications. The great, endless river of words that sustained this enterprise has finally run dry. All that is left is this terrible, honest silence. In this silence, you become a witness to the final, unspoken confessions of the soul. Your gaze falls upon Charles Lane. His back is ramrod straight, his posture as rigid as ever. But his face, once a mask of fierce, dogmatic certainty, is now just a blank wall. You look into his eyes, and you see the hollowed-out look of a man who has lost everything. His faith, his fortune, his entire purpose. He stares at the thin gruel in his bowl, as if it is the physical embodiment of his life's work. A thin, watery, and unsatisfying end. The fanatic has been silenced by the simple, brutal fact of an empty larder. You look at Bronson Alcott. He is a broken man. He does not even lift his spoon. He stares into his nearly empty bowl, his shoulders slumped, his face a landscape of absolute despair. The gentle, dreamy light in his eyes has been extinguished. You can feel the crushing weight of his failure, not just as a philosopher, but as a husband and a father. He had promised his family a new Eden, and he has led them instead to this cold, hungry ruin. There are no more beautiful words to shield him from this truth. And then you look at Abba Alcott. She is the still, silent center of the room. She eats her tiny portion with a slow, mechanical resolve. Her face is a study in stoic grief. She is not mourning a failed idea. She is mourning the suffering of her children. Her gaze is fixed on her youngest daughters as they quietly eat their meager shares. She is the only one at the table whose thoughts are not in the past, fixed on the wreckage of the dream, but in the terrifying, uncertain future. Her mind is not on philosophy, it is on survival. How will she get her children out of this place? Where will they go? The silence speaks the truths that no one dares to utter aloud. This is over. We have failed. We have nothing left. We will not survive the winter here. Every person at the table is listening to these same silent words. The dream of Fruitlands has died, and this is its wake. The meal ends as quietly as it began. It takes only a few minutes. One by one, they rise from the table and drift away into the cold, dark corners of the house, isolating themselves in their private grief and failure. No one says goodnight. There is nothing good about this night. You are left alone at the empty table, the dirty wooden bowls a testament to the meal that was barely a meal at all. You understand that this was not a supper, it was a funeral. It was the last supper of the consociate family. The end has already come. All that remains is for the last few ghosts to depart. An idea, like a house, is built with great effort and noise, but its collapse is often a quiet affair, a silent cracking of the foundation, a slow surrender to gravity, a final weary sigh as the structure gives way. You are here not for a dramatic explosion, but for the quiet, final, and inevitable disintegration of a world. The morning after the Last Supper arrives with a hushed grey light. A light snow has begun to fall, the flakes drifting down slowly, aimlessly, blanketing the frozen, failed farm in a layer of pure white silence. The snow muffles all sound, and it feels as though the world is holding its breath. Inside the farmhouse, the silence that fell at the dinner table has not lifted. It has deepened, solidified. It is the silence of an ending. You are a witness to the final quiet conversation between the two men who began this dream. There is no anger left, no energy for philosophical debate. There is only the bitter, shared ashes of their failure. You listen as Charles Lane, his voice flat and hollow, speaks for the last time. The idea was pure, he says, not to Mr. Alcott, but to the empty room itself. It is humanity that is flawed. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak and selfish. He looks for a moment at the corner where Abba and her children huddle for warmth, and you know he is passing his final judgment on the selfish family institution he believes has poisoned their Eden. Then you watch him as he packs. His movements are methodical, precise, and completely devoid of emotion. He folds his few linen garments, gathers his son William, and prepares to leave. The goodbye is a stark and hollow thing. The two men, who for months were brothers in a fervent, shared faith, now stand as strangers on opposite sides of a ruin. They shake hands. A brief, awkward gesture. Then Mr. Lane and his son step out of the door and into the falling snow. They walk down the track without looking back, their dark forms slowly dissolving into the white, swirling air until they are gone completely. With their departure, the consociate family officially ceases to exist. His absence breaks the last, fragile thread holding the others. You witness the quiet, somber departure of Joseph Palmer. He approaches Abba, his weathered face full of a gentle, compassionate sorrow. He says little, knowing words are useless now. He simply presses a small, concealed apple into her hand, a final gift for the children, and offers a quiet word of encouragement. He is a good man who found himself in the wrong story. You watch him, too, walk away, his sturdy form a lonely figure against the vast white landscape. One by one, the last few remaining souls depart, each with a quiet nod or a murmured farewell. Each departure is another thread being pulled from a worn-out tapestry until the entire thing has unraveled. The house grows emptier and quieter with each person who leaves, the silence deepening, the cold intensifying. Finally, you are left with only the Alcotts. 7 souls in a house that feels as vast and empty as a tomb. They are now utterly alone. And it is in this moment of complete isolation that Bronson Alcott, the visionary, the prophet of this failed paradise, finally breaks. With the last of his disciples gone, with no one left to listen to his philosophy, the great scaffolding of his ideas collapses, leaving him with nothing but the raw, crushing weight of his failure. You watch as he retreats to his bed in the cold room, pulls the thin blankets over his head, and turns his face to the wall. He speaks to no one, he does not eat. He has abdicated from a world that would not conform to his dream. He is a king who has lost his kingdom, a captain who has sunk his own ship, and he has surrendered to his despair. The final burden now falls entirely on Abba. You see her go to her husband's bedside. You hear her speak to him in a low, gentle voice, trying to coax him back to the world of the living, but he does not respond. You see the moment she understands he is lost to them, at least for now. You see her straighten her back, her face a mask of fierce, sorrowful resolve. Her dreamers have abandoned her, one to a new life and one to his own inner darkness. She is now the sole guardian of her 4 children, stranded in this desolate place in the heart of a brutal winter. The chapter of Fruitlands is over. You stand in the main room, now silent save for the whisper of the falling snow outside. You see the empty chairs at the long table. You see the children, huddled together by the last of the fire. And through the window you see the snow, falling thicker now, burying the failed farm, covering the tracks of those who have left, and cloaking the world in a deep, profound, and indifferent silence. A dream of a perfect world can leave you shivering in the ruins, but the real world, for all its flaws, has its own small pockets of grace. A warm hearth, a shared meal, a kind hand offered in the dark. You are about to witness the end of a grand philosophy and the beginning of a simple act of human kindness, a reminder that sometimes shelter is not an idea, but a door that opens when you have nowhere else to go. The snow falls for days, burying the world in a deep white silence. Inside the frigid farmhouse of Fruitlands, a different kind of silence reigns. The food is gone, the firewood is gone, and hope is gone. You are a witness to the final, desperate moments of the Alcott family, trapped in the wreckage of their failed Eden. Mr. Alcott remains in his bed, a man who has retreated so far into the darkness of his own despair that he no longer speaks or eats. He is surrendering, but his wife is not. You watch Abba Alcott. You see the moment a final, unbending resolve hardens in her eyes. She will not let her family perish in this cold, ideological tomb. You witness her bundle her 4 daughters in every layer of warm, impure clothing they have left. She whispers words of encouragement to them, her voice a thin but steady flame in the crushing cold. Then she opens the door and leads them out into the snow. You follow them as they abandon the farmhouse for the last time. The journey is not long, only down the track to the home of their neighbours, the Hosmer family, but it is a journey of immense symbolic weight. Every step is a retreat from the abstract ideal, and a step towards the simple, flawed world of human community. The snow is deep, and the children are weak, but their mother's strength pulls them forward. You arrive with them at the Hosmer's farmhouse. When the door swings open, you are hit by a wave of sensation so powerful it is almost shocking. It is a wave of warmth from a roaring fire. It is the smell of wood smoke, of baking bread, of a life being lived. Mrs. Hosmer takes them in without a word of judgment, her face a portrait of simple, human compassion. She ushers the cold, hungry children toward the fire, and you witness an act of grace that no philosophy at Fruitlands could ever conjure. You are now an observer inside this warm, bustling, ordinary home, and the contrast to the place you have just left is a physical blow. Here, you witness the true aftermath of the failed experiment. They bring Mr. Alcott in and place him in a small, warm room, but the warmth does not touch him. You see him lying in bed, his face turned to the wall, refusing the warm broth that is offered to him. He is a man consumed by the shame of his failure. His body is safe, but his spirit has collapsed. The cost of his perfect dream is a desire for his own death. While he surrenders, his wife fights. You witness Abba's incredible, quiet resilience. Her first duty is to her children. You see her help them remove their damp things and settle them by the fire. You are there for the moment Mrs. Hosmer brings them bowls of warm porridge with a splash of milk and a spoonful of brown sugar. You watch the girls eat, their eyes wide with a pleasure they have been denied for over half a year. It is a simple, profound scene, the taste of sweetness and warmth after a long season of cold, tasteless purity. Abba does not rest. You see her go to her husband's side. She speaks to him in a low, pleading voice, trying to anchor him back to the world. He does not respond. She does not give up. You see her take his hand, a small, persistent act of connection against his immense, silent withdrawal. And late at night, when the house is quiet and her children are finally asleep in warm beds, you are the only witness to her private grief. You see her sitting by the fire, her strong facade finally gone, and you feel the immense weight of her exhaustion, her sorrow for the dream her husband has lost, and her terror for the future he may not be a part of. Days pass. He remains lost in the fog. The turning point when it comes is not a grand event. It is a quiet, simple act of love. You are in the room as Abba sits on the edge of his bed. She does not speak of philosophy, or of God, or of the soul. She speaks of their life together. She reminds him of their courtship, of the births of their daughters, of a shared joke, of a time they went for a walk in the woods. She speaks of the small, tangible, beautiful things that make up a life, the very things his grand, abstract philosophy had sought to transcend. She speaks not to the philosopher, but to the husband and the father. He has been facing the wall, and as she speaks, you see him, for the first time in days, slowly, hesitantly, turn his head towards her. You see a flicker of recognition in his dull eyes. It is the first sign of his return. The storm of Fruitlands is over, and the first fragile ray of light has broken through. Time does not heal all wounds, but it can change their shape. It can transform a sharp, immediate pain into a dull ache, a tragedy into a lesson, and sometimes, if you are very lucky, an absurdity into a very good story. You are about to leap forward 3 decades, to witness a memory being forged into art, and to see how a child's suffering can become a writer's greatest strength. The image of the Alcott family, huddled and broken in the borrowed warmth of their neighbor's home, begins to fade. The sounds of the harsh winter, the whistling wind, and the quiet sobs of despair dissolve into a profound silence. You feel a sense of temporal dislocation, a swift and seamless journey across the years. The cold, sparse world of 1844 dissolves, and a new scene crystallizes around you. The air is warm and smells of beeswax, old paper, and a hint of wood smoke from a gently crackling fire. You find yourself in a comfortable study, the kind of room that speaks of quiet, hard-won prosperity. The walls are lined with bookshelves overflowing with bound volumes. A thick rug covers the floor, and through the window you see a peaceful, well-tended garden in Concord. It is 30 years later, the autumn of 1873. At a large, solid writing desk sits a woman in her early 40s. This is Louisa May Alcott. You see her and you recognize her immediately, not as the thin, hungry, wild-haired girl from the farm, but as the woman she has become. There is a weariness in her eyes, the look of a person who has worked tirelessly, but there is also a deep, unshakable confidence in the set of her jaw. She is no longer a victim of her family's poverty. She is its savior. Her pen has become her weapon and her salvation, and with it, she has single-handedly secured their comfort and their legacy. You watch her as she writes, a silent witness to the act of creation. Her pen scratches across the paper, a small, determined sound in the quiet room. Her brow is furrowed in concentration, but as you observe her, a small, wry smile occasionally touches her lips. You move closer, and you feel as though you can hear the words as she writes them, the story taking shape in your mind in her own clear, intelligent voice. She is not writing about the Alcotts. She is writing about the Lamb family. You hear her narrate the tale of Abel Lamb, the gentle, high-minded philosopher who was always in the clouds, a man determined to found a new Eden. You recognize her father instantly, his portrait drawn with a mixture of deep, abiding love and sharp, satirical wit. And you hear of Timon Lyon, the severe reformer who believed that apples were the only food for unfallen man, a perfect, cutting caricature of the dogmatic Charles Lane. The story she is writing is called Transcendental Wild Oats. It is the story of Fruitlands. As she writes about the family's diet, a ghostly image flashes in your mind. You are back at the sparse Fruitlands table, watching the hungry children try to eat their unseasoned barley. But here, on the page, Louisa transforms the pain into sharp comedy. She writes of how the community banned all vegetables that grew downward, for all aspiring souls must eat aspiring foods. The adult writer has found a way to articulate the sheer absurdity that the child could only endure. You watch her describe the principle of animal-free labor, and you see again the pale, blistering hands of the philosophers in the field. But she writes of it with a kind of pitying humor, describing the band of brothers who declared that the subjection of the beast of the field was a crime, and so set about weeding a field of barren sand with their own soft hands. This, you realize, is her final victory over Fruitlands. It is an act of alchemy. She is taking the raw, painful material of her childhood, the hunger, the cold, the constant anxiety, the collapse of her father's spirit, and she is spinning it into gold. The act of writing is an act of control. She cannot change the past, but she can frame it. She can give it a meaning and a shape. She can take the power back. You see her pause, setting down her pen, and her gaze drifts to the fire. Her expression is complex. You see the shadow of the old pain, a lingering sorrow for the hardship her family endured. You see a deep, unwavering affection for her flawed, brilliant, and hopelessly idealistic father. But you also see the quiet, profound satisfaction of the artist. She has found the right words. She has told the truth of the experience, not just its grim reality, but its comical, ridiculous, and deeply human absurdity. She has taken her family's greatest humiliation and turned it into a timeless, enduring story. With the money earned from this and her other books, she has paid off the family's lifelong debts, secured a comfortable home for them, and given her parents a peaceful old age they never could have achieved on their own. The hungry child from the failed Utopia has become the steadfast provider. The silent witness has become the powerful narrator. And as she picks up her pen to write the final lines, you understand that this is the true and final harvest of Fruitlands. And so, the story ends. The journey is over. You have been a silent witness to the birth and death of a beautiful, impossible dream. What remains? Now that the players have left the stage and the scenery has been put away, only the story itself, and the quiet, poignant echo of its lesson. A truth that settles like dust on the ruins of a noble idea. The image of the writer in her warm, comfortable study begins to fade. The scratching of her pen, the crackle of the fire, the scent of old paper, it all dissolves, leaving you in a quiet, reflective space, unmoored from time. Your journey through the seasons of Fruitlands is complete, and you are left with the memories of what you have seen, a silent witness to a grand and tragic failure. You reflect now on the dream itself. You must admit, in the quiet of this final moment, that there was a profound beauty in it. You saw its birth in the hopeful air of Concord, an idea born of a deep and sincere desire for a better world. It was a dream of a life lived without causing harm, a world without violence or exploitation where even the ox was a brother and the sheep was a neighbor. It was a dream of a life free from the sin of slavery, a refusal to wear the suffering of others on one's back. It was a dream of a society without the corrupting influence of money, and of a home where children could be raised in a state of absolute innocence, their pure souls untouched by the grime of the world. You saw the nobility in that vision. It was a radical attempt to live a life of perfect principle, to align every single action from the clothes on one's back to the food on one's plate with the highest moral truth. It was in its own strange way a heroic endeavor. But then, you remember the cost. You remember the human price that was paid for this beautiful, impossible idea. The images flicker in your mind, sharp and clear. You see the children again, their small bodies shivering uncontrollably in the thin, scratchy linen tunics as the first hard frost settles over the farm. You are back at the long, silent dinner table, feeling the dull, persistent ache of hunger. watching a mother cut a single apple into transparently thin slices to feed a room full of people. You see the face of Bronson Alcott, the visionary. After the dream has died, a hollow, broken man turned to the wall in a borrowed bed, his great, soaring spirit completely extinguished by the crushing weight of his failure. And finally, you see the face of Abba Alcott, standing alone at a window, looking out at the falling snow. You see the landscape of her features, the exhaustion, the sorrow, the fear, and beneath it all, the unbending, unbreakable resilience of a mother who would not let her family perish. That was the true cost of the dream. It was paid with the health and happiness of children, with the spirit of a father, and with the immense, uncelebrated, and almost unbearable sacrifice of a mother. You reflect on their fates. Charles Lane, the zealot, eventually found a home with the Shakers, his desire for a rigid, celibate, and disciplined life fulfilled in their structured community. Bronson Alcott was slowly coaxed back to life by his wife's love, and lived out his days as the gentle, eccentric sage of Concord, forever cared for and protected by the daughter whose success he had never managed to secure himself. Abba Alcott's legacy was the most profound and the most private. Her family survived, and Louisa, the silent witness, transformed it all. She took the hunger, the cold, and the absurdity and spun it into art. She took on her father's worldly debts and paid them, not with philosophy, but with the royalties from her stories, becoming the practical, successful head of the family her father could never be. In the end, the story of Fruitlands is a simple, timeless, and cautionary tale. It is a story about the profound danger of loving an idea more than you love the people it affects. It is a reminder that any dream of heaven, if it is not grounded in the humble soil of human reality, with its need for warmth, for food, for simple comforts, and for the fierce, selfish love of a family, can create a very real and very cold hell on earth. Your journey is over. The silence that remains is for you to carry, a quiet, somber understanding of the true cost of a perfect dream. And so, our journey to Fruitlands comes to an end. We leave the Alcotts, rescued from their beautiful broken dream, and now forever a part of a quiet, cautionary tale. It's a story that reminds us how the loftiest of ideals can sometimes create the harshest realities, and how the greatest strength is often found not in a grand philosophy, but in the simple, resilient love of a family. Thank you so much for joining me tonight and for being a silent witness to this small, forgotten piece of history. If you enjoyed this story and appreciate the calm, immersive style of our channel, a simple like or a subscription is always deeply appreciated. It truly helps our small community grow. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Alcott family's experience in the comments below. Or, if you have any other strange, forgotten corners of history you think would make a good story for sleep, please feel free to share them. My wish, as always, is that this story has given your mind a quiet and interesting place to wander as you drift off. Until next time, sleep well.